philosophy consists of speculation about matters where exact knowledge is not yet possible. But that will only be my answer, not anybody else's.
What's the difference between philosophy and science?
Well, roughly you would say science is what we know and philosophy is what we don't know. That's a simple definition. And for that reason, Christians are perpetually passing over from philosophy into science as knowledge advances.
So when something is established and discovered, it ceases to be philosophy and becomes science.
Yes. And all sorts of questions that used to be labeled philosophy are no longer so labeled.
What good is philosophy?
I think philosophy has two uses, really. One of them is to keep alive speculation about things that are not yet amenable to scientific knowledge. After all, scientific knowledge covers a very small part of the things that interest mankind and ought to interest them. There are a great many things of immense interest about which science at present does not say. And I don't want people's imaginations to be limited and enclosed within what can be now known. And I think to enlarge your imaginative purview of the world into the hypothetical realm is one of the uses of philosophy. But there's another use which I think is equally important, which is to show that there are things we thought we knew and don't know. On the one hand, to keep us thinking about things that we may come to know, and on the other hand, to keep us modestly aware of how much that seems like knowledge isn't knowledge.
Could you give some illustrations of the sort of subject which have been speculated about and then produce some material result later?
Yes, it's quite easy to do so, especially from Greek philosophy. The Greeks invented a whole lot of hypotheses which turned out valuable later, but which in their day couldn't be tested. Take, for example, the atomic hypothesis. Democritus invented the atomic hypothesis that matter consists of little atoms. And after about 2,000 years, rather more than that, it turned out that this was the right scientific view. But in his day, it was merely a suggestion.
But didn't Plato think that Democritus' theory about atoms was a lot of nonsense?
Plato was horrified by him, said all his books ought to burn, because Plato didn't like science. He liked mathematics, but he didn't like anything else that was scientific.
Now, in this way, philosophy, in a sense, becomes a kind of servant of science.
Well, that's part of it. But, of course, it isn't only a servant of science, because there are a number of things that science can't deal with. All questions of values, for example. Science won't tell you what is good and what is bad. It'll tell you what is good or bad as an end, and not just as a means.
But what change has there been over the years in the attitude of philosophers of the public to philosophy, would you say?
Well, that depends on the school of philosophy that you're thinking of. In Plato and in Aristotle, both of them, there was the main thing was an attempt to understand the world, and that I should say personally is what philosophy ought to be doing. But then you come on to the Stoics, and their emphasis was mainly on morality. That you ought to be stoical, you ought to endure misfortunes patiently, and that came to be the popular use of a philosopher.
Would you say that Marx was a philosopher?
Well, he was certainly in a sense a philosopher, but now there you have an important division among philosophers. There are some philosophers who exist to uphold the status quo, and others who exist to upset it. Marx, of course, belongs to the second block. But for my part, I should reject both those as being not the true business of a philosopher. And I should say the business of a philosopher is not to change the world, but to understand it, which is the exact opposite of what Marx said.
What kind of a philosopher would you say you are?
Well, the only label I've ever is logical atomist. Very keen on the label. I've rather avoided labels. I've been a philosopher. It means, in my mind, that the way to get at the nature of any subject matter you're looking at is analysis, and that you can analyze until you get to things that can't be analyzed any further. Those would be logical atoms. I call them logical atoms because they're not little bits of matter. They're the, so to speak, ideas out of which a thing is built up.
What is the main trend of philosophy today?
Well, one would have to distinguish there between English-speaking countries and continental European countries. The trends are much more separate than they used to be. Very much more. In English-speaking countries, especially England, there is a new philosophy which has arisen, I think, the desire to find a separate field of philosophy. In what I was saying a moment ago, it would appear that philosophy is merely incomplete science, and there are people who don't like that view. They want to have science have a sphere, philosophy have a sphere to itself. That has led them into what you may call linguistic philosophy. That the important thing for the philosopher is not to answer questions, but to get the meaning of the questions quite clear. I can't myself agree to that view, but I can give an illustration. I was once bicycling to Winchester, and I lost my way, and I went to a village shop, and I said, can you tell me the shortest way to Winchester? And the man I asked called to a man in a back region whom I couldn't see. Gentleman wants to know the shortest way to Winchester. The voice came back, Winchester? Aye. Way to Winchester? Aye. Shortest way? Aye. No. So I had to go on without getting an answer. Well, that is what Oxford philosophy thinks one should do.
We get the question right, never mind about the answer.
Yes, it's somebody else's business to give the answer.
How does this differ from the continental approach?
The continental approach is, well, it's more full-blooded. I don't agree with it anymore. But in a sense, it's much more full-blooded and much more like philosophies of earlier times. There are various kinds of philosophy that comes from Kierkegaard, existentialism. And then there are philosophies designed to provide apologetics for traditional religion. There are various things of that sort. I don't think myself that there's anything very important in all that.
What practical use is your sort of philosophy to a man who wants to know how to conduct himself?
A great many people write to me saying they are now completely puzzled as to how they ought to conduct themselves because they've ceased to accept the traditional signposts to right action and don't know what others to adopt. And I think that the sort of philosophy I believe in is useful in this way, that it enables people to act with vigor when they're not absolutely certain that that is the right action. I think nobody should be certain of anything. If you're certain, you're certainly wrong, because nothing deserves certainty. And so one ought always to hold all one's beliefs with a certain element of doubt, and one ought to be able to act vigorously in spite of the doubt. After all, this is what a general does when he's planning a battle. He doesn't quite know what the enemy will do, but if he's a good general, he guesses right. If he's a bad general, he guesses wrong. But one has, in practice, to act upon probabilities. And what I should look to philosophy to do is to encourage people to act with vigor, without complete certainty.
Yes, but now, how about this business, though, of making people so uncertain about things they would believe and have faith in. Doesn't that rather disturb them?
Well, it does for a time, of course. And I think a certain amount of disturbance is an essential part of mental training. But if they have any knowledge of science, they get a ballast which enables them to avoid being completely upset by the doubts that they ought to feel.
What do you think is the future of philosophy?
I don't think philosophy can in the future have anything like the importance it had either in the Greeks or in the Middle Ages. I think the rise of science inevitably diminishes the importance of philosophy.
Well, would you summarize the value of philosophy?
First, because, as I say, it keeps you realizing that there are very big and very important questions that science at any rate at present can't deal with, and that a scientific attitude by itself is not adequate. And the second thing it does is to make people a little more modest intellectually and aware that great many things which have been thought certain turned out to be untrue, and that there's no shortcut to knowledge, and that the understanding of the world, which to my mind is the underlying purpose that every philosopher should have, that is a very long and difficult business, about which we ought not to be dogmatic.
Thank you, Lord Russell.
Sailboat in a still sky. Sailboat in a still sky, tadpole in a puddle, alone in a hayfield, looking for trouble, trying to make love from whiskey and rolls, waking up late to a worn out soul, stepping down highways and off to the side, looking for traps, someplace to hide, shooting your poison and chasing it with pride, chasing it down, casting your line, casting your play with whoever you find, on a gambling thumb, just letting it ride. In the next town, do the dance just right for a dying man's diamond. It's a hell of a night. Turn behind me, one I'll take some night alone. When the whiskey will blind me, nothing's in stone, except all the stones swallowed since last night. But don't worry, little fella, he'll sink just right. Sun in the sky falling from sight brings the stars that were always there to light. That's what we do with all our might for a dying man's diamond. It's a hell of a night.
Switzerland. Carl Gustav Jung, born in 1875. With Freud, one of the founding fathers of modern psychology. Still working at 84, he is the most honored living psychiatrist, and history will record him as one of the greatest physicians of all time.
How many years have you lived in this lovely house by the lake at Zurich?
It's just about 50 years.
Do you live here now just with your secretaries and your English housekeeper?
Yes.
No children or grandchildren with you?
Oh, no, they don't live here. But I have plenty of them in the surroundings.
Do they come to see you often?
Oh, yes.
How many grandchildren have you?
19.
And great-grandchildren?
I think 8, and I suppose one is on the way.
And do you enjoy having them?
Well, of course it's nice to feel such a living crowd around oneself.
Are they afraid of you, do you think?
I don't think so. If you would know my grandchildren, you wouldn't think so. Yeah.
What?
They steal my things. Even my hat that belongs to me, they stole the other day.
Now, can I take you back to your own childhood? Do you remember the occasion when you first felt consciousness of your own individual self?
That was in my 11th year. There I suddenly, on my way to school, I stepped out of a mist. It was just as if I had been in a mist, walking in a mist, and I stepped out of it and I knew I am what I am. And then I thought, but what have I been before? And then I found that I had been in a mist, not knowing to differentiate myself from things. I was just one thing among many things.
Now, was that associated with any particular episode in your life, or was it just a normal function of adolescence?
Well, that's difficult to say. As far as I can remember, nothing had happened before that would explain this sudden coming to consciousness.
You hadn't, for instance, been quarreling with your parents or anything?
No.
What memories have you of your parents? Were they strict and old-fashioned in the way they brought you up?
Oh, well, you know, they belonged to the later parts of the Middle Ages. And my father was a parson in the country, and you can imagine what people were then, you know, in the 70s of the past century. They had the convictions in which people have lived since 1,800 years.
How did he try to impress these convictions on you? Did he punish you, for instance?
Oh, no, not at all. No, he was very liberal, and he was most tolerant, most understanding.
Which did you get on with more intimately, your father or your mother?
That's difficult to say. Of course, one is always more intimate with the mother. But when it comes to the personal feeling, I had a better relation to my father, who was predictable, than with my mother, who was, to me, very problematical something.
So, at any rate, fear was not an element in your relation with your father?
Not at all.
Did you accept him as being infallible in his judgments?
Oh no, I knew he was very fallible.
How old were you when you knew that?
Now let me see. Perhaps 11 or 12 years old. It was hanging together with the fact that I knew I was. And from then on, I saw that my father was different.
Yes. So the moment of self-revelation was closely connected with realizing the fallibility of your parents.
Yes, one could say so.
Now, what about...
And I realized that I had fear of my mother, but not during the day. There she was quite known to me and predictable, but in the night I had fear of my mother.
And can you remember why? Can you remember what that
I have not the slightest idea why.
What about your school days now? Were you happy at school as a schoolboy?
In the beginning I was very happy to have companions, you know, because before I had been very lonely. We lived in the country, and I had no brother and no sister. My sister was born very much later, when I was 9 years old. And so I was used to be alone, but I missed it. I missed company. And in school it was wonderful to have company. But soon, you know, in a country school, naturally, I was far ahead. And then I began to be bored.
What sort of religious upbringing did your father give you?
Oh, we were Swiss Reformed.
And did he make you attend church regularly?
Oh, well, that was quite natural.
Yes.
Everybody went to church on
Yes.
Sunday.
And did you believe in God?
Oh, yes.
Do you now believe in God?
Now, difficult to answer. I know. I don't need to believe. I know.
Well, now, turning to the next staging point in your life, what made you decide to become a doctor?
That was in the first place a merely opportunistic choice. Originally, I wanted to be an archaeologist, Assyriology, Egyptology, or something of the sort. I hadn't the money. The study was too expensive. So my second love then belonged to nature, particularly zoology. And when I began my studies, I inscribed in the so-called philosophical faculty too. That means natural sciences. But then I soon saw that it was the career that was before me would make a schoolmaster of me. I never thought I had any chance to get any further because I had no money at all. And then I saw that didn't suit my expectations. You know, I didn't want to become a schoolmaster. Teaching was not just what I was looking for. And so I remember that my grandfather has been a doctor, and I knew that when I was studying medicine, I had a chance to study natural science and become a doctor. And a doctor can develop. You see, he can have a practice. He can choose his scientific interests more or less. At Alliance, I would have more chance than being a schoolmaster. Also, the idea of doing something useful with human beings appealed to me.
And did you, when you decided to become a doctor, have difficulty in getting the training at school and in passing the exams?
I particularly had a difficulty with certain teachers that didn't believe that I could write a decent thesis. I remember one case where the teacher had the habit to discuss the papers written by the pupils. And he took the best first. And he went through the whole number of the pupils, and I didn't appear, and I was badly proud of it. Well, it is impossible that my thesis can be that bad. And when he had finished, he said, there is still one paper left over, and that is the one by Jung. That would be by far the best paper if it hadn't been copied. He has just copied it somewhere, stolen. You are a thief, Jung. And if I knew where you have stolen it, I would fling you out of school. And I was mad, and I said that this is the one thesis where I have worked the most, because the theme was interesting. You could not distinguish the other things which are not at all interesting to me. And then he said, you are a liar, and if you can prove that you have stolen that thing somewhere, then you get out of school. Now that was a very serious thing to me, because what age then? And I hated that fellow, and that was the only man I could have killed, you know. If I had met him once at the dark corner, I would have shown him something of what I could do.
Did you often have bad thoughts about people when you were young?
No, not exactly. Only when I got mad. Well, then I beat them up.
And did you often get mad?
Not so often, but then for good.
You were very strong and big, I imagine.
Yes, I was pretty strong. And you know, reared in the country with those peasant boys. It was a rough kind of life. I would have been capable of violence, I know. I was a bit afraid of it. So I rather tried to avoid critical situations because I didn't trust myself. Once I was attacked by about 7 boys, and I got mad, and I took one and just swung him round with his legs, you know, and beat down 4 of them, and then they were satisfied.
And were there any consequences from that?
Oh, I should say yes. From then on, I was always suspected that I was at the bottom of every trouble. I was not, but they were afraid, and I was never attacked again.
Well, now, when the time came that you qualified as a doctor, what made you decide to specialize in being an alienist?
Yeah, that's rather an interesting point. When I had finished my studies practically, and when I didn't know what I really wanted to do, I had a big chance to follow one of my professors. He was called to a new position in Munich, and he wanted me as his assistant. But then, in that moment, I studied for my final examination. I came across the textbook, a textbook of psychiatry. Up to then, I thought nothing about it because our professor then wasn't particularly interesting. And I only read the introduction to that book, where certain things were said about psychosis as a maladjustment of personality. That hit the nail on the head. In that moment, I saw I must become an alienist. My heart was thumping wildly in that moment. When I told my professor I couldn't follow him, I would study psychiatry, he couldn't understand it. No, my friends.
Llewellyn Beans! I didn't think anybody was out there.
Was nothing at all.
I didn't think anybody was out there.
But I saw one great chance to unite certain contrasting things in myself, namely, beside medicine, beside natural science, I always had studied history of philosophy and such subjects. It was just as if suddenly 2 streams were joining.
And how long was it after you took that decision that you first came in contact with Freud?
Oh, you know, that was at the end of my studies, and then it took quite a while until I met Freud. You see, I finished my studies in 1900, and I met Freud only very much later by read. In 1900, I already read distributed interpretation and the Freud studies about hysteria, but that was merely literary, you know. And then in 1907, I became acquainted with him personally.
Will you tell me how that happened? Did you go to Vienna?
Oh, well, I'd written a book about the psychology of dementia precox, that one called schizophrenia then. And I sent him that book, and thus became acquainted. I went to Vienna for a fortnight then, and then we had very long and penetrating conversations, and that settled it.
And this long and penetrating conversation was followed by personal friendship?
Oh yes, it soon developed into a personal friendship.
And what sort of man was Freud?
Well, he was a complicated nature, you know. I liked him very much, but I soon discovered that when he had thought something, then it was settled, while I was doubting all along the line. And it was impossible to discuss something really à fond. You know, he had no philosophical education, particularly, you see, I was studying Kant, and I was steeped in it, and that was far from Freud. So, from the very beginning, there was a discrepancy.
Did you in fact grow apart later, partly because of a difference in temperamental approach to experiment and proof and so on?
Well, of course, there is always a temperamental difference. And his approach was naturally different from mine because his personality was different from mine. That led me into my later investigation of psychological types. There are definite attitudes. Some people are doing it in this way and other people are doing it in another typical way. And there were such differences between myself and Freud too.
Do you consider that Freud's standard of proof and experimentation was less high than your own?
Well, see, that is an evaluation I'm not competent of. I am not my own history or my historiographer. With reference to certain results, I think my method has its merits.
Tell me, did Freud himself ever analyze you?
Oh yes, I had submitted quite a lot of my dreams to him, and so did he.
And he to you, yes?
Oh yes, yes.
Do you remember now, at this distance of time, what were the significant features of Freud's dreams that you noted at the time?
Well, that is rather indiscreet to ask. You know, there is such a thing as a professional secret.
He's been dead these many years.
Yes, but these regards last longer than life. I prefer not to talk about it.
Well, may I ask you something else then, which perhaps is also indiscreet? Is it true that you have a very large number of letters which you exchanged with Freud, which are still unpublished?
Yes.
When are they going to be published?
Well, not during my lifetime.
You would have no objection to them being published after your life?
Oh, no, not at all.
Because they are probably of great historical importance.
I don't think so.
Then why have you not published them so far?
Because they were not important to me enough. I see no particular importance in them.
They are concerned with personal matters?
Well, partially. But I wouldn't care to publish them.
Well now, can we move on to the time when you did eventually part company with Freud? It was partly, I think, with the publication of your book, The Psychology of the Unconscious. Is that correct?
That was the real cause.
Well now, before you...
Oh, I mean the final cause. Because it had a long preparation. You know, from the beginning I had a reservatio mentalis. I couldn't agree with quite a number of his ideas.
Which ones in particular?
Well, chiefly his purely personal approach and his disregard of the historical conditions of man. You see, we depend largely upon our history. We are shaped through education, through the influence of the parents, which are by no means always personal. They were prejudiced or they were influenced by historical ideas or what I call dominance. And that is a most decisive factor in psychology. And we are not of today or of yesterday. We are of an immense age.
Was it not partly your observation, your clinical observation of psychotic cases which led you to differ from Freud on this?
It was partially my experience with schizophrenic patients that led me to the idea of certain general historical conditions.
Is there any one case that you can now look back on and feel that perhaps it was the turning point of your thought?
Oh yes, I made quite a number of experiences of that sort, and I went even to Washington to study Negroes at the psychiatric clinic there in order to find out whether they have the same type of dreams as we have. And these experiences and others led me then to the hypothesis that there is an impersonal stratum in our psyche. And I can tell you an example. We had a patient in the ward. He was quiet but completely dissociated, schizophrenic. And he was in the clinic already for over 20 years. He had come into the clinic, as a matter of fact, being a young man, a little girl, and did no particular education. And once I came to the ward, and he was obviously excited and called to me, took me by the lapel of my coat and led me to the window and said, "Doctor, now you see, now look at it, look up at the sun and see how it moves. See, you must move your head too like this, and then you will see the follows of the sun. And that's the origin of the wind. And you see how the sun moves as you move your head from one side to the other." Now, of course, I didn't understand it at all. I thought, there he was. He's just crazy. But that case remained in my mind. And 4 years later, I came across a paper written by the German historian Dietrich, who had dealt with the so-called Mithras literature, a part of the great Parisian source of papyrus. And there he produced the part of the so-called Mithras literature. Namely, it says that after the second prayer, thou wilt see how the disk of the sun unfolds. And you will see hanging down from it the dew, the origin of the wind. And when you move thy face to the regions of the east, it will move there. And if you move your face to the region of the west, it will follow you. And instantly, I know, anyway, now this is the vision of my patient.
But how could you be sure that your patient wasn't unconsciously recalling something that somebody had told him?
Oh no, quite out of question, because that thing was not known. It was in a magic papyrus in Paris, and it wasn't even published. It was only published 4 years later after I had observed it with my patient.
And this you felt proof that there was an unconscious which was something more than personal.
Oh, well, that was not a proof to me, but it was a hint. And I took the hint.
Now, tell me, how did you first decide to start your work on the psychological types? Was that also the result of some particular clinical experience?
Less so. It was a very personal reason. Really, to do justice to the psychology of Freud, also to that of Adler, and to find my own bearings. That helped me to understand why Freud developed such a theory. Oh, why Adler developed his theory, his power principle.
Have you looked at what psychological type you are yourself?
Naturally, I have to go with a great deal of attention to that painful question,
And reached a conclusion.
Well, you see, the type is not static. It changes in the course of life. But I most certainly was characterized by thinking. I always think the world is unfair. And I had a great deal of intuition too. And I was not particularly brilliant. I was often at variance with the reality of things. Now that gives you all the necessary data for the diagnosis.
During the 1930s, when you were working a lot with German patients, you did, I believe, forecast that a Second World War was very likely. We're now looking at the world today, and still the Third World War is likely.
I have no definite indications in that respect, but there are so many indications that one doesn't know what one sees. Is it trees or is it the moon? It's very difficult to say because the dreams of people's dreams contain apprehensions, but it is very difficult to say whether they point to a war, because that idea is uppermost in people's mind. Formerly, it has been much simpler. People didn't think of a war, and therefore it was rather clear what the dreams meant. Nowadays, no more so. We are so full of apprehensions, fears, that one doesn't know exactly to what it points. One thing is sure, a great change of our psychological attitude is imminent. That is certain. Because we need more psychology. We need more understanding of human nature, because the only real danger that exists is man himself. He is the great danger, and we are pitifully unaware of it. We know nothing of man, far too little. His psyche should be studied, because we are the origin of all coming evil.
Well, does man, do you think, need to have the concept of sin and evil to live with? Is this part of our nature?
Well, obviously.
And of a redeemer?
That is an inevitable consequence.
This is not a concept which will disappear as we become more rational. It's something...
Well, I don't believe that man ever will deviate from the original pattern of his being. There will always be such ideas. For instance, if you do not directly believe in a personal redeemer, as it was the case with Hitler, or the hero worship in Russia, then it is an idea. It is a symbolic idea.
You have written one time and another some sentences which have surprised me a little about death. Now, in particular, I remember you said that death is psychologically just as important as birth, and like it's an integral part of life, but surely it can't be like birth if it's an end, can it?
Yes, if it's an end. And there we are not quite certain about this end. Because, there are these peculiar faculties of the psyche that it isn't entirely confined to space and time. You can have dreams or visions of the future. You can see round corners and such things. Only ignorance denies these facts. It's quite evident that they do exist and have existed always. Now these facts show that the psyche, in part at least, is not dependent upon these confinements. And then what? When the psyche is not under that obligation to live in time and space alone, and obviously it doesn't, then to that extent the psyche is not submitted to those laws. And that means a practical continuation of life, of a sort of psychical existence beyond time and space.
Do you yourself believe that death is probably the end, or do you believe that...
Well, I can't say. You see, the word belief is a difficult thing for me. I don't believe. I must have a reason for a certain hypothesis. Either I know a thing, and when I know it, I don't need to believe it. If I don't allow myself, for instance, to believe a thing just for the sake of believing it. I can't believe it. But when there are sufficient reasons for a certain hypothesis, I shall accept these reasons naturally and should say we have to reckon with the possibility of so-and-so, you know.
Well, now, you told us that we should regard death as being a goal,
yes,
and that to shrink away from it is to evade life.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
What advice would you give to people in their later life to enable them to do this when most of them must in fact believe that death is the end of everything?
Well, you see, I have treated many old people, and it's quite interesting to watch what the body is doing with the fact that it is apparently threatened with a complete end. It disregards it. Life behaves as if it were going on. And so I think it is better for old people to live on, to look forward to the next day, as if we had spent centuries. And they live better. But when he is afraid, when he doesn't look forward, he looks back, he petrifies. He gets stupid. He dies before his time. But then living on, looking forward, to take attention that is ahead, then you live. And that is about what your God is intended to do. Because it's quite obvious that they are all going to die, and the sad finale of everything. But nevertheless, there is something in us that doesn't believe it, apparently. But this is merely a fact, a psychological fact. It doesn't mean that it proves something. It is simply so. For instance, I may not know why we need salt, but we need salt because you feel better. And so when you think in a certain way, you may feel better. And I think that if you think along the lines of nature, then you feel properly.
And this leads me to the last question that I want to ask you. As the world becomes more technically efficient, it seems increasingly necessary for people to behave communally and collectively. Now, do you think it possible that the highest development of man may be to submerge his own individuality in a kind of collective consciousness?
That's hardly possible. I think there will be a reaction. The reaction will set in against this communal dissociation. You know, man doesn't stand forever. It is nullification. Once there will be a reaction, and I see it setting in. You know, when I think of my patients,
I want the world to know. Though I love my life, I do not hate to go. No, no, no. No, no, no. It's always been clear to me. I smile to think I'm here but for a little while. like it there. Like it or not, I will not have a present. No, no, no. No, no, no.
It has been reproached as an invitation to people to dwell in the quietism of despair. For if every way to a solution is barred, one would have to regard any action in this world as entirely ineffective, and one would arrive finally at a contemplative philosophy. Moreover, since contemplation is a luxury, this would only be another bourgeois philosophy. This is, especially, the reproach made by the communists. From another quarter, we are reproached for having underlined all that is ignominious in the human situation, for depicting what is mean, sordid, or base to neglect of certain things that possess charm and beauty and belong to the brighter side of human nature. For example, according to the...
So when I go, oh no, do not shed a tear. I've been on my way for all my years, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I won't be on my knees pleading for more. And I don't know what lies waiting on the other shelf. I got a feeling I'm gonna like it there. Like it or not, I will not have a care. No, no, no. No, no, no.
Be surprised at the mention of humanism in this connection, but we shall try to see in what sense we understand it. In any case, we can begin by saying that existentialism, in our sense of the word, is a doctrine that does render human life possible. A doctrine, also, which affirms that every truth and every action imply both an environment and a human subjectivity. The essential charge laid against us is, of course, that of overemphasis upon the evil side of human life. I have lately been told of a lady who, whenever she lets slip a vulgar expression in a moment of nervousness, excuses herself by exclaiming, "I believe I'm becoming an existentialist." So it appears that ugliness is being identified with existentialism. That is why some people say we are naturalistic. And if we are, it is strange to see how much we scandalize and horrify them. For no one seems to be much frightened or humiliated nowadays by what is properly called naturalism. Those who can quite well keep down a novel by Zola, such as La Terre, are sickened as soon as they read an existentialist novel. Those who appeal to the wisdom of the people, which is a sad wisdom, find ours sadder still. And yet, what could be more disillusioned than such sayings as "charity begins at home," or "promote a rogue and he'll sue you for damage, knock him down and he'll do you homage"? We all know how many common sayings can be quoted to this effect, and they all mean much the same: that you must not oppose the powers that be, that you must not fight against superior force, must not meddle in matters that are above your station, or that any action not in accordance with some tradition is mere romanticism, or that any undertaking which has not the support of proven experience is foredoomed to frustration, and that, since experience has shown men to be invariably inclined to evil, there must be firm rules to restrain them, otherwise we shall have anarchy. It is, however, the people who are forever mouthing these dismal proverbs, and whenever they are told of some more or less repulsive action, say, "How like human nature!" It very people, always harping upon realism, who complain that existentialism is too gloomy a view of things. Indeed, their excessive protests make me suspect that what is annoying them is not so much our pessimism, but much more likely, our optimism. For, at bottom, what is alarming in the doctrine that I am about to try to explain to you is it not? That it confronts man with the possibility of choice. To verify this, let us review the whole question upon the strictly philosophic level. What then is this that we call existentialism? Most of those who are making use of this word would be highly confused if required to explain its meaning. For since it has become fashionable, people cheerfully declare that this musician or that painter is existentialist. A columnist in Clark's signs himself the existentialist, and indeed, the word is now so loosely applied to so many things that it no longer means anything at all. It would appear that, for the lack of any novel doctrine such as that of surrealism, all those who are eager to join in the latest scandal or movement now seize upon this philosophy in which, however, they can find nothing to their purpose. For in truth, this is of all teachings the least scandalous and most austere. It is intended strictly for technicians and philosophers. All the same, it can easily be defined. The question is only complicated because there are two kinds of existentialists. There are, on the one hand, the Christians, amongst whom I shall name Jaspers and Gabriel Marcel, both professed Catholics, and on the other, the existential atheists, amongst whom we must place Heidegger as well as the French existentialists and myself. What they have in common is simply the fact that they believe that existence comes before essence, or, if you will, that we must begin from the subjective. What exactly do we mean by that? If one considers an article of manufacture as, for example, a book or a penknife, one sees that it has been made by an artisan who had a conception of it, and he has paid attention equally to the conception of a paper knife and to the pre-existent technique of production, which is a part of that conception and is, at bottom, a formula. Thus, the paper knife is at the same time an article producible in a certain manner, and one which, on the other hand, serves a definite purpose. For one cannot suppose that a man would produce a paper knife without knowing what it was for. Let us say then, of the paper knife, that its essence, that is to say,
Building your online business?
Do you think there's life on... Do you think that there is life on other planets? Do you think there's life on other planets? Do you indeed think that there is life on other planets? Do you think there's life on other planets?
Oh.
That there is life on other... Do you think that there is life on other planets? Do you think there's life on other planets?
Oh, I don't know.
Would you like to think about it for a second?
Oh, not really.
Tell me, do you think there is life on other planets?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but I suppose there would be.
No, he seems definite. He seems
Definitely.
How do you see this life and where?
Oh, it's in a flying saucer.
You've seen one?
Yes,
When was this?
definitely. At Lane Cove,
When was this?
1953.
You don't think this is a figment of your imagination?
Several other people with me saw it.
You all had the same figment. What did it look like?
It was standing up there still,
Just suspended in space,
with colours coming out of it.
flat or on its side.
It was around.
And you think this was sent from another planet? Nick?
I really do. Well, where else would it come from?
Do you think there's life on other planets?
Oh, well, I wouldn't like to even discuss that.
Why not?
It's a debatable point, I suppose.
What do you think yourself? You must have an opinion here.
Well, definitely not.
Not?
Not.
Well, what leads you to say that? Scientific investigation or?
Well, only working off the theory of the Bible. Well, there's only one world, isn't there? And
that can stand up to present scientific investigation?
Oh, I think it could.
Do you think so?
I think
as far
it
as the
could.
universe goes.
Definitely so.
In your opinion, do you think there is life on other planets?
No, I hope not.
Why do you hope not?
Because they'd be frozen to death.
Do you think there is life on other planets?
No, I'm German.
Yes, definitely.
Why? What sort of life do you see up there?
Vegetable.
Do I think there's life on other planets? No.
Why not?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't think we'll find anything when eventually we land on Venus?
I don't think we'll find life.
What do
We
you think
might
we'll
find very interesting things, though.
Such as?
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't really say what as. I don't know. But I dare say it'll be something worth knowing. I think there is life on other planets.
And how do you see this life? How do you visualize it yourself?
It's rather like queer-looking people.
Queer-looking people. They're totally different from the people on Earth?
I suppose so.
Uh-huh. Would you like to get up there yourself and see it on Venus?
Not particularly.
Why not?
So I like it down here. I reckon there is.
What makes you reckon that?
Well, just, I don't know, it's not imagination, it's just what,
You're being led by scientific discoveries, etc.
yes.
Yeah, well, how do you see this life? Do you think there is life up there? How do you see it? What form do you think it takes?
Animal, because we're animals, aren't we?
For some of them.
Yes.
Speak for yourself. How do you see them up there, though?
Oh,
I mean, the same as here? Do you think if you land on
no,
Venus, we
no.
discover people like you?
No,
Totally different.
it all depends what atmosphere they're living in. I think it'd be an animal form, but I don't think it'd be like us.
You think that's a good thing?
Well, I don't know.
Would you like to get up there and find out for yourself?
Definitely.
Would you?
Too right I
Volunteer for
would.
this.
Too right I would. I'd like to be the first woman in space.
Do you think there is life on other planets?
Oh, I don't know.
Have you thought about this at all?
No.
Do you think there is life on other planets?
No, French.
I speak English, French.
Vous pensez qu'il y a autre vie de les planètes Mars et Venus?
Oui.
Oui?
Oui.
C'est français, hein?
Où ça là-bas, chez Mars? Je sais pas.
I think what?
There is life on other planets.
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Wouldn't have a notion, would I?
Hey?
I wouldn't have a notion.
You haven't thought about this at all?
Oh, I've thought about it, but no, I wouldn't think there would be.
Do you think it would be a good thing for the Earth if there was life indeed up there on Venus?
I suppose competition is pretty good at any time, isn't it?
Clogged with yesterday's excess, the body drags the mind down with it.
Obviously,
Never.
the ET craft exist. Something had to build them, so there must be aliens. And since there are, obviously, the ET craft do exist. Something had to build them, so there must be aliens. And since there are and the craft are there must be some sort of factory and an entire civilization somewhere.
And if in fact that is true, and it apparently is, then there must be others. Man-made.
It probably really hit me when I got inside the craft and looked around and began to understand how the craft was operated and finally
Lazar learned how these craft operate by studying.
Le navire.
That was so much fun. Thank you, everybody. See you soon. Oh, Ryan's coming over tomorrow. That's going to be fun. All right. Bye.
Sounds about right. Good thinking. Still too bright.
Too bright. Too bright. Tuxedos. Everyone got it. Everybody went on God. Everybody went on out of the light, out of space in the mind, in the mind of love space. They were floating around out of space, in my mind, and out of the light, and out of the space, and out of the mind, out of space, and out of the light, round and out of space, and my mind, out of space. Outer space, matter, float around space. They don't know matter. They don't matter. They don't matter. They don't matter. I float around my mind now. Well, I float around my mind's in outer space. I float around my mind's in outer space.